Welcome to the Big Pricing Webinar. My name is Rosh. I'm here to support you and your photography business. This is the one thing we know. If you want to continue to do what you love to do, which is photograph, and actually earn a living photographing, you need to understand the business of photography. And one of the key elements to the equation of a solid photography business is understanding pricing. And that's what this webinar is all about. And it's going to be in multiple sections. And so I'm going to talk about the cost of doing business. I'm going to talk about copyright and pricing systems, as well as tips along the way. Per image pricing, getting paid, communication, and then I have some Q&A that will help support you. Common questions that people ask me all the time about their photography business and pricing. So this is a free seminar, but it is sponsored by the big seminar or a series of webinars that I have packaged together. And of course you can find that at price.photography. The nice thing about those webinars is that there are actually documents that go with some of them, and I put a whole package of them together. But I'm not going to sell you on this right now. You'll find all the rest of the information at the end of this video. So if you're interested in more information, more robust information about growing your photography business with good business ideas and pricing related topics, go to the end of this video or just head on over to price.photography. And you'll find this video there too. But let's get right into it. Let's talk about pricing photography and creating a much more healthier business for you so you can continue to do what you love. All right, here we go. So the first topic is the cost of doing business. But before we get deep into that, let's talk about your goals. What are your goals for your photography business? Do you know what I consider a successful photography business? Is it one that makes $100,000, $500,000, $1 million a year? Not necessarily. A successful photography business is a business that has positive cash flow. In other words, you have more coming in than you have going out. So in other words, there are successful photography businesses that make $25,000 a year. And there are failing photography businesses that make $100,000 a year. In other words, they bring in $100,000 worth of business, but they spend $150,000. So at the end of the year, they've actually gone into debt. So you want to make sure you have a positive cash flow. You need to understand your expenses. You need to understand what's coming in and what's going out. In other words, don't be afraid of the red. Think about, in other words, if you are negative, you need to address it. If you're positive, great, you're on the right track. But you need to know how much you're spending each month. And a lot of times when we get into the photography business, we want to create photographs. We don't want to think about the business side. But if we understand that there are costs, and there are actually costs to our success, as we grow, our expenses will grow too, and we need to plan for that. So, how much do you have coming in? Now, part of your equation for the cost of doing business is to understand, one, how much do you want to make? That's the first thing. So is that $25,000 a year? Is that $50,000? Is it $100,000? If you're new to the business, I would start smaller. The average photographer probably makes around $35,000 a year. Now, many make a lot less and some make a lot more, many times more than that. And the biggest thing that probably contributes to that is not necessarily that they're great photographers, and they very well may be, but they understand the business side of photography. They understand marketing and they understand how to run their company well. So to understand the cost of doing business, take a look at how much you want to make. Take a look at all your expenses. How much does it cost for you to live? How about your rent? How about your food? Your insurance, clothing, savings, taxes? Write all of that down and add it all together, including how much you want to make, and then divide it by how many days do you think you'll actually work. Now you can combine it. Maybe over a week you'll work 3 hours here, 7 hours there, maybe just a couple hours each day. because that's what is required for your type of photography. Every type of photography is different. A wedding photographer may just work weekends. So maybe it's once a week. So let's start with once a week, 50 weeks a year, 52 weeks a year, but keep it easy to divide everything because that's what we have to use that number for. Now, if you're more seasoned, you can take a look at how many jobs you did last year or how many days you worked, and then add to that number based on the pipeline coming in of new jobs and your goals. That's fine, but be realistic. The key here is to be realistic. So once you've added up all of your numbers, and of course I go through all of this in the deeper specific seminar on the cost of doing business, which you find again, price.photography. Once you add all of that up, divide that number, and you just might be surprised. It might be $1,000, $1,500 a day that you need just to break even. Now, there are other elements to consider. You don't always price your photography based on the cost of doing business. Photography is often priced based on its usage, and I'll talk about that more in the copyright section. But for right now, take a moment, add up everything you can possibly think of, how much it costs for you to live, but also your business expenses. If you have a studio, even if you don't. If you have a camera, what would it cost to replace it? What would it cost to rent equipment? How about travel? Everything you can possibly think of. Again, add it all up and then divide by the number of days you think you're going to work next year, and then you have your cost of doing business. Next, let's talk about copyright. When you press that shutter button, you are now the proud owner of a copyrighted image. It doesn't matter if you want it or not, it's yours, it's the law, and you own it. And the only way you can not own it is if you work for somebody else, for example, maybe a newspaper or a business who sends photographers out to represent them. So if they're paying you a salary, and if they give you a 401k and health insurance and you're using their equipment, they own the photographs. You're their representative. However, if you are freelance, you are the copyright holder. Somebody, just because they're paying you, doesn't automatically get the copyright unless you give it to them in writing, or if you sign a work made for hire contract. And that's something I certainly talk about in the other webinars. It's important to understand that a work made for hire is not really a good deal. You're just handing over all of your rights, and it gives you the opportunity to have no opportunity to sell your images down the line, which is a big part of a photographer's income. Additional income streams from the photography they've already created in the past. Now, usage of photography is a big part. Let me explain it this way. So you own a copyrighted image. You've kept the copyright, and people want to use your images. In other words, you are licensing your images whether you realize it or not. Because think of it this way. If you bought software, somebody wrote that code and you bought the software program and you put it on your computer. This same idea actually applies to photographers. You can't take that software and take that code and then sell it all over and make money off of it. No, somebody owns the copyright to that code. They own the code, just like your photography. So when somebody buys the right to use your photography, then they don't have the right to resell it unless they purchase that copyright from you or you give them permission. And so the usage of your photographs for many of us, maybe you're a wedding photographer, a senior photographer, family photographer, it's personal use. And so your prices reflect that. And usually it's around, your cost of doing business, but also your cost of doing business plus your branding maybe. If you have, that's one way to increase your rates, is because you've increased your brand, your reputation over time. And we can talk about that related to communication and some of the other elements within this webinar. But you want to understand that as people use your photographs at a higher level to also make money, you can increase your rates based on the usage of the photograph. So for example, a small company wants to use your photograph to create flyers and maybe put it on their window in the downtown store, on the storefront. And the value of that is a little bit more, that photograph is a little more than the person's using it for personal use, right? And also, if a larger company wants to take your photograph and put it in national ads all over the country, if not the world, and billboards, the value of that image is much greater to them. And so the usage and the distribution of that photograph is greater, and so you would also have a higher price. Now, one of the ways in which you can price your photography is say, look, if I know that somebody's going to use the photograph, say on a website, and they have less than 1,000 views each month, I will then give it, I'll sell the photography at my cost of doing business rate. However, if it's over, say, 10,000 or 20,000 views per month, or maybe 100,000 views, it is up to you to decide where those breakpoints are in the distribution. But if a lot more eyeballs are going to see that, obviously it's a bigger company and they're making more money with your photographs. If more eyeballs are going to see it, then you can say, okay, if it's over 100,000 views that month, I will times my base rate by 0.1% or 10% or 20, increase by 20%. Now, sometimes you can just say by $500, but I like to use a percentage. It's a lot easier to work with. And you can do the same thing with distribution. If somebody's going to make a brochure, so a distribution under 20,000 is at your cost of doing business price, or if it's over 50,000, it's a 25% premium. You can break this up, and I highly recommend you write all this down. How are people most likely going to use your photographs based on the type of photography that you do? If it's food photography, if it's architectural photography, it's wedding photography. But also have some kind of commercial price ready to go, because sometimes, even as a wedding photographer, maybe the cake decorator wants to use your photograph commercially. Maybe somebody you took a portrait of in a family setting wants to use that photograph to run for Congress. What is your price? Because they're using it initially for personal use. So understanding, yes, you can, but I add a 50% premium to the price, or you owe me another $100, or whatever it may be. Figure that out ahead of time. The key to good pricing, one, is to certainly ask a lot of questions, which we'll talk about in a few moments later in the webinar. But two, having a list ahead of time, understanding your rules, writing it all out, keeping the document on your desktop. And so when somebody comes to you and says, hey, I want to purchase your copyright, you can say yes or no based on the needs. And the reality is, some photographers do not ever sell the copyright, and other photographers just give it away for free. And I think in many cases it's okay to sell the copyright if there's legitimate use and reason. For example, it's proprietary content, or maybe there is a reason for them to resell the photographs. There are a number of reasons why somebody would want to, and most of the time the only good reason is if they want to resell your photograph for specific use, and they're going to make more money over time. It's a smart move to purchase that copyright. So understand your rights, and you could increase, let's say somebody wants to purchase your copyright, and you say, okay, automatically it's double the fee. So if your per image price, which we'll talk about in a few moments in another section, is $500. If you want to purchase the copyright, it would be $1,000. But maybe it's up 50%, which would be $750. So there, again, a number of ways to approach this. And understanding your copyrights, it's really important to understand this basic fact. This is the best way to put it, I think. If people here's a better way to put it. If your copyright is not valuable, then why are people working so hard to get it? Why do they want it? Why are they giving you work made for hire contracts? Why do they want it? Because it has value. Whether you believe it has value or not, it does have value to them. If it didn't at all, they wouldn't be asking. So cherish your copyright. It is your right. It is something of value. And people using your images, your eye, Nobody has your eye. Nobody photographs the way you do. You are unique. So understand your value, understand your copyright's value, and you will have a much more successful photography business. Next, we're going to talk about pricing systems, and there are a number of pricing systems, and one of the main ones that I like to promote and share with you is per image pricing. So we'll talk directly about that in the next section, and I also have a full webinar on per image pricing, which actually I just completed a few moments ago, so I'm pretty excited about it. But let's just talk about different pricing systems that you can consider for your photography. You understand your cost of doing business. Remember, it seems like everything goes back to your cost of doing business, and a lot of times it does. But there are different pricing systems, and when you figure out your day rate, when you originally do your cost of doing business analysis and you divide the number of days you think you're going to work, that is your day rate. And I generally use day rate as an internal number. I don't use it as an external number for the most part. Now, there are times that I do, for example, hourly or day rates for events. I don't mind doing it for events because I can't be highly productive at an event. I can take more photographs and so forth, but it really just seems to be a more natural situation. You have to be at the event from this point in time to this point in time. You do a great job, and then you have your system for delivery of those images. However, for other types of photography, I find per image pricing to be a better way to go, and we'll talk more about that in that next section coming up. Okay, but let's talk about hourly. So a lot of photographers use hourly, and that's fine. And remember, if your cost of doing business is $1,500 a day, for example, photographers generally use a 10-hour day. And the reason for that is you have an hour for setup and an hour for breakdown, and then 8 hours of photography. And so you divide that up by 10, so a $1,500 day rate would be $150 an hour. Now, some photographers actually say the first hour is $250 and each additional hour is $150. That way, your base expenses are covered for setting up, and any other little expenses are covered for arrival. And sometimes people just say, hey, I want you for an hour. And so that way, if it's just 1 hour, it really does make it a little more reasonable for you to charge a little bit more, because you're going to have time getting there and a lot of other details that you put into just 1 hour of work. So generally that first hour quite often can be a little bit more money. However, if it's a long period of time, maybe it's a few days shoot, a few day assignment, you may not do that. You could waive that additional fee. It's up to you. Now, some photographers have package prices. In other words, maybe they throw design in there, they have video, they have other elements that they have in their services, and they package it all together. And that's not a bad way to go. And even if you're just purely photography for, say, a wedding or even a senior, well, that's a situation where a package price the package price could be just perfect. And so per project pricing, package pricing is often, it gives the customer a feeling that, you know, they're going to get a good deal, because your regular rates are much higher, but when you pull it all together, they get a little bit of a better deal and you're guaranteed a little bit more money. It's often a good way to go. I consider that second to per image pricing, a good package pricing deal for your clients. Now, if you're doing portraits or seniors or whatever it may be, you could have a sitting fee. So if you're going to spend an hour of time, you don't know what people are going to purchase later in terms of reprints or products. So maybe you have an initial sitting fee just to make sure your basic time is covered. And so that's a good way to go. You can always have a combination of all of these things that I'm speaking of. There is not a right answer to your pricing. The only right answer is that you're covering your cost of doing business. And one of the things I talk about in the bigger webinar series, Price.Photography, are the ways you might want to consider approaching charities, and the way you might want to, when you want to bring your price down or when you want to increase your price. We talk about that quite a bit, and that's something to think about. But other types of pricing that you might want to consider, a la carte pricing, meaning you list everything you do and you work with the client to select the best package for them based on the different products or services that you offer. Now, I also, well, let's just touch right now on per image pricing. Per image pricing, the best way to do it is just to give you a quick story. Let's say somebody wants you to photograph for their website. They need 10 images. And let's just kind of get into the per image pricing conversation here with this. So they want you to photograph 10 images, and you figure you're going on location and you know your day rate is $1,500. You've done your cost of doing business, and you've decided that, okay, it's local use. You're not going to increase the rate at all, put a premium on it because, again, local use. And so it's $1,500. It'll be about $500 in expenses. Maybe there's some assistance, and maybe there's some location fees or even set fees, or maybe there's a model. Who knows? There's a number of things that could become involved in this, and you've figured it all out ahead of time. And this is really key. Something we're going to talk about in the question and answer, again, is asking a lot of questions. Now, with a $1,500 fee, and $500, that's $2,000. Now, one of the first things that often happens is, wow, $1,500 for an entire day? Well, the thing is, photographers, as we know, generally don't work every single day. And you know what? It isn't their problem, is it? But the fact is, if you want to continue to photograph and they want you as a photographer to stay in business because they like your work, well, then you have to stay in business and you have to charge what you have to charge to stay in business. But a lot of times that is a shock. And here's the thing, when you put the price on your time, on a day rate, for especially like a commercial job or a series of portraits or whatever it may be, let's say you get done early, you're really efficient at what you're doing and you're done at 2 o'clock. And they're expecting you to be there at 5. Or maybe even you got done at noon or 1 o'clock, whatever it may be, and now they're looking at the time to say, well, you're only here for half a day, so, well, we'll give you $750. You say, well, wait a minute, no, I scheduled the whole day, this is, no, they're going to feel cheated if you charge them for a full day. And if you say, hey, it was $1,500 for the whole day, but if you push that on them, they're going to feel cheated. They're going to feel like that they didn't get the full value, and you're probably going to lose a client. They may pay you, but they're not going to call you back next time. And you want a long-term relationship. Long-term relationships are how our businesses continue to grow, and referrals, and they're not going to refer you because they feel like they were cheated. Now let's say you're just a little bit early, like 4 o'clock, and you've created all 10 images at 4 o'clock, but say, wow, we have an extra hour. Why don't we add more images on? Maybe more people in because we have a few more people who could be photographed. Great, but that means you're going to be doing that work for free. How's that? Well, what about post-production? What about your time working with those images, editing those images, and any of the post-production that you do to those images? Those 2 or 3 additional images, you're working for free. You are working for free. So that is on you, and you're not feeling very good about it. Now, you may feel that, okay, I'm keeping my client. I have a good, happy client, because as we just discussed, happy clients are good. We want referrals. We want them to continue to use us, but ultimately, you are working for free, and it's not working out for you in terms of your business model. So now let's look at the per image pricing model. The same scenario, 10 photographs for their website. Now, it's $2,000. We know $1,500 is our internal day rate number plus $500 for expenses. We divide that by 10, which means it's $200 per image. In other words, we put the cost of your services on the image rather than your time. It's on the image where I think it belongs, quite personally. So, you say $200 per image, you get done at 2 o'clock, and what does the client say? Great, we get done early, you're really efficient, and do they want a discount? No, why do they need a discount? Because they're still getting the full value of the images that they requested. They know the value. Now let's say, oh, we're done at 2 or 3 o'clock, and another person comes in, more people come in, or they have more ideas for photographs. Well, no problem, because they know the value of those images. And so if they add 2 or 3 or 4, another 5 images, that's fine, because now instead of $2,000, you're going to make $3,000. And another nice thing about this is that sometimes they purchase images down the road. So you may take a few more images. I wouldn't take a whole bunch, maybe like I wouldn't take 8, 9, 10 images without some sort of real interest. But if there's some opportunities along the way that we're not on their shot list, create the images. Why not? And then maybe they'll purchase them later. So I am always open to that idea because quite often they will come back and ask for more images. But it depends on you and your workflow and the way you like to do it. Remember, you are in control of the situation. But per image pricing, one, puts the risk on you. Now you can have a minimum purchase, and we'll talk about that in the per image pricing series. A minimum purchase. You can say, no matter what, to cover my expenses, you need to purchase 3 or 5 out of those 10 images. But you don't have to purchase any other ones. In other words, that's kind of a risk reversal scenario where you put the risk on you. The fact is, hiring a photographer is a big risk. And if you can take the risk, again, something we'll talk more about, take the risk off you, they're more willing to hire you. And I'll explain all that, of course, in that seminar. But the fact is, if you can give them a good reason to hire you with low risk, the fact is, usually people buy more images, not less. The thing is, they are always in control of their budget. They're not worried if you're going over, that if you spill into the next day and you're available, it's not going to cost them a whole nother day rate. And also, being in control of their budget, they can say, this is exactly how much I want to pay. They know we're going to create 10 images and we have enough for those 10 images, and there are not going to be any surprises along the way. At the same time, you have the opportunity to make more money, because if you do a good job, then of course, they may purchase more photographs. And I have found that to be the case quite often. So if it's a day rate, of course you're going to do a good job. But if it's per image, you're going to have a much healthier paycheck if you do your best work. There are other combinations, such as a combination of a day rate and per image pricing. There's also incentive pricing, something we talk about a lot in the other webinars. But the fact is, there are many options for you to consider in the pricing of your photography. There is no one right answer. As I mentioned, the only right answer is that you are covering the cost of your business and that you are profitable so you can photograph another day. In this section, we're going to talk about getting paid. Oh, so important is getting paid for your work. Cash flow is the key to keeping your business running, and making sure that you get paid on time is highly important and should be a priority. Now, there are a number of ways you can go about that, and first, of course, is having a contract or at least some sort of paperwork that can show people exactly how much they owe you and the terms and conditions related to the purchase of your photography. Something that you can refer back to in case there are any disagreements or any issues. A good contract, definitely consider hiring an attorney to review your contracts and, of course, give you some advice going down the road. But you need to find a good experienced attorney along those roads, because the reality is there are different types of attorneys, but not all of them understand the photography business or the ins and outs of copyright and so forth. Now, getting paid is certainly an important part by making sure that, one, you're very clear in your communication, you give people an invoice in a timely manner. Now, in some cases, for example, if you are a wedding photographer, you may want to ask for a deposit to make sure that your time is covered. And I would recommend a non-refundable deposit, because you are holding that date maybe for 6 months, a year, even 2 years down the road. And if you have to scramble to find a bride and groom who need somebody on that day, a month out, that may not happen. So you need to make sure at least your time is covered. And so having a deposit, generally for retail and family photography, is a good idea. Now, commercial photography, if you have a high production process, in other words, there are lighting people and assistants and stylists in the process of creating your images, you might want to have a a down payment to cover travel and so forth, because that can be a lot of out-of-pocket money. Now, you can get lines of credit, but I think it's better to have the commitment from that client ahead of time, especially for such a large production. Now, there are a few things you can do on your invoices to help increase the speed of which you will receive your money. Now, you can do the standard, which is 30 days. And you can do what's called net 30. And with net 30, you can give, say, 2%, 3%. Some people give 5% off. What does that mean? If they pay their bill within 30 days, they can take that percentage off. You can make it any time frame you want. You could say net 45, you could say net 15. If they pay within 15 days, they get 5% off. If they pay within 30 days, net 30, they get 3% off. Now, when working with larger companies, this is important because you have to think about it. A lot of companies do this to help improve cash flow. And so if a lot of companies do this, it becomes standard for them to actually accept those terms of service to save money. Because if a lot of companies, a lot of their bills are these net 30 and save percentage, that for a big company can be a lot of savings over a year. So they automatically take that money and give you the discount, get your money in the time frame that you have set. Again, 15, 30, 45 days, 60 days, whatever it may be. Another thing you can do is create an admin fee. An admin fee says, okay, I'm going to put an admin fee on the invoice for $50 or a percentage, $50 or a percentage of the total. Maybe it's $100 just automatically, or $250 for larger invoices. And if people pay their bill within those 30 days, they can take the admin fee off. Now, not everybody does this. It's not used very often. Usually it's the net 30 or net 15, but an admin fee is not a bad way to go. And sometimes they still pay it, in the admin fee. And there's nothing wrong with that. The fact is, you're not a bank, and you do need your money as soon as possible. You have expenses pending related to your assignments. You need to pay your assistants. You need to pay your rent. You need to pay you. And so waiting an extended period of time, they are borrowing that money from you. And so there's often a fee associated from that. They would charge you a fee no matter who it is, whatever company, a bank or a financial firm or a mortgage company or anyone, your neighbor down the street. If you had money, if you borrowed money for extended period of time, friends, family, they're going to probably want to charge you interest. So consider that fact. So don't be afraid to tell people, if you're going to use my money beyond 30 days, there is a fee attached. And to reinforce this basic fact, communication is extremely important in terms of getting paid, expectations for both you and the client. This leads us to our second to last topic in this webinar, which is communication. Good communication is so key in terms of getting paid and for your clients to really understand the pricing system, usage, copyright. You should at least all lay it out in your paperwork, but having a conversation on a basic level. Not everybody wants to hear all about it, but they should understand the basics, or at least point out where they can find that information later and what it means. And to let them know if they have any questions related to all of this copyright and use, and of course your terms of service, you're available. And there are resources. And sometimes having that on your website is one of the best ways to go. Say, look, just go to this part of my website. And maybe it's not something that's public, but it's available to your clients. That lays it all out so they feel more comfortable to hire you. And it's important to have good confidence in your pricing system. For example, the per image pricing system. I think it's great. But I know photographers who have trouble with it. They can't sell it. For me, I think it makes selling photography easier. But not everyone agrees with that. So you have to find the pricing system that works best for you. And quite often, it's a combination of pricing systems. And learning how to communicate that well, again, in your paperwork as well as in person. You know, good pricing can be part of your marketing. The per image pricing system that I use is part of my marketing. I let the clients know that they are now in full control of their budget, and it's on me to do the best job I can possibly do. And I'll be rewarded if I do a great job, but if I don't do a great job, they don't have to pay for images that they don't want. That is a great system. But that's for me, not necessarily for you. But you do need to learn how to communicate and let people know that you do have to communicate the entire process so people are comfortable with you. So communication is highly important to run a profitable photography business. You need to lay it all out. Don't assume they know what to do. It may be the first time they've worked with a photographer. Let them know when their deposit is due, and let them know when you expect to be paid. Maybe you have multiple payments along the way to the wedding. Lay it out. Put it down on paper or send them automatic emails, but make sure your communication is seamless. Let them know if the last deposit is due the day of the event. Ask questions. If you're working with businesses, ask them, what is their payment cycle? Some people pay every 2 weeks. Some people pay 30 days on the dot. Some people, they're not sure. Their accounting, receivables, and everything department is just a big old mess. It's good to know that it might be 60 days because they have no idea what they're doing. It happens. It does happen. I've had situations where people said, yeah, we'll pay you in 180 days. And when 180 days comes, well, you're going to have to refile your paperwork. Oh. So there is an important point. When you are working with businesses, make sure you have your proper paperwork. Make sure that you invoice them. Send that W-9 with all of your information, because quite often I've seen this happen more than once, where it's 30 days and you're calling and saying, hey, I'm just inquiring about this invoice, and say, oh, we haven't received all of your paperwork. So now the clock starts over and it's 60 days. And so what you need to do, and especially sometimes you wait 45 days or 60 days before you call. Now it's 60, 90 days. So always send, especially with a new client, the W-9 with all of your tax information and the invoice. Ask, who does this paperwork go to? Who is the proper person? Who will deliver it? Who do I follow up with? And what is your standard procedure? Don't assume. Just don't submit an invoice and pray. Take the time to ask good questions so you know what to expect. And you may be surprised. You say, well, we pay in 60 days. If you hadn't asked, you may have been calling on 30 days wondering, where's my money? And that sometimes can be embarrassing, especially if they have a system that you were not aware of, but maybe common knowledge to other people. I don't know. There are a lot of scenarios, but the best way to break through all of that and to prevent problems down the road, whether it's a retail client or a corporate client, is to ask a lot of good questions. And if you do that, chances are you won't be surprised and you'll get paid, and you can plan so you can have positive cash flow for your business. Okay, this is my favorite part of the webinar series. And actually I have a lot of question and answer videos in the webinar series below if you're watching this at pro.roshsillars.com. And so I'm going to go through a few of them, but there are many more that you may be asking. And of course, you can put your questions in the comments below. I'm happy to answer questions wherever you happen to find this video, on YouTube or on the blog, wherever you can at pro.roshsillars.com. I like to answer your questions, and sometimes I create videos out of your questions. So here we go. The first question is, what if I feel like my price is too high? Let me tell you, there's always agony and worry and fear when it comes to pricing. You know, if we price too low, we could be leaving money on the table. If we price too high, we could lose the job. You should have a comfort point, and of course the cost of doing business needs to be that comfort zone for you. Over time, you can gradually increase your rates. But if you ask a lot of good quality questions, it'll often give you the guidance you need to price your photography appropriately. Look, prices are different all over the country, if not the world. The cost of doing business is different here in Detroit than it is in New York, and that it may be in Knoxville, Tennessee. The fact is, it's different everywhere. So pricing is all over the board. Even here, where I live in Michigan, it's all over the board, depending on photographers' experience, their confidence in their photography, and their brand. A lot of times the difference between a photographer who has a $1,500 day rate or a $500 rate or a $15,000 day rate, and yes, there are photographers who do, is their brand, their reputation. So build your brand and reputation and your confidence and gradually increase your rates. Now, one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever seen is to start off really low and gradually work your way up. The one thing I've often seen is that people start off really low, you get stuck there. Because people who are looking for cheap photographers refer you to other people who are looking for cheap photographers. And people who are looking for high-end photographers refer to other people who are looking for high-end photographers. The next question is, should I register my copyright? Now, this is for our US viewers, and the basic answer, the standard best business practice is yes. I mean, the fact is, when you click the shutter button, you are the owner, and as we know, of a copyrighted image. You don't have to do anything else. However, if you register your copyright with the US government at copyright.gov, and you can batch this, you don't have to pay for each image, you can batch your images, and all the information is at copyright.gov. I'll put a link right about here or so to let you know exactly where to go. But the fact is, if you ever have a situation where someone infringes on your copyright and you have a good case, you can get more damages. You have more rights available to you, or more opportunity to you to receive compensation if you have registered that copyright ahead of the infraction and have done the whole process properly. So as a best practice, the best answer is yes, you should. Do you have to register every single image that you create? Well, if you have a workflow down and you just automatically do it, say, once a month, it's not a bad practice. But no, you probably don't. I don't register all of my images. But, you know, the reality is I probably should if I wanted to stay within the best practice guidelines. So the answer is you probably should. You don't have to. But if you're concerned, then go to copyright.gov and get all of the information there, and it can be very helpful to you. The next question is about per image pricing, and this is a common question that I get often related to the topic. Sometimes people do the math and they feel like, wow, they're just pricing themselves out of the market by using the per image pricing method. Now, remember our example during the per image pricing session? The fact was, we were at $2,000 when we added everything up for 10 images, $500 for expenses, $1,500 for our day rate. But if they needed 20 images and it was still going to take a day because the production level for each image was lower, well, then it could have been $100 per image. So we don't have to price ourselves out of the market by adding more images. Now, one thing that I often will do is make the first image higher. So maybe the first image is $300 and then each additional image is $200 to make sure my bases are covered if they don't purchase all the images. Now, usually they purchase all the images and quite often they purchase more. But when they purchase more, so let's say they wanted 10 images, but I could say if you purchase beyond the 10 images you originally agreed to, I will sell those to you for $150. And so there's actually incentive for them to buy more images. Now, I wouldn't make it $25 or $50. You don't want to lose the full value of the image. You want to make sure that they feel like they're getting a deal, maybe 10, 20, 25% off that price, but make sure that you are still keeping the value within those images. Don't have the first image $1,000 and then each additional $100. Make sure it's within the same range so the value of that image isn't diminished because of your pricing structure. So I have a couple more question and answer webinars over at price.photography. Now, these webinars are housed at pro.roshsillars.com. Price.photography actually takes you to the webinar page where you'll see this video and a number of other videos available to you. Now, you can purchase these videos independently, and you can do that on the pro.roshsillars front page. But I've bundled them all together, especially for this summer specifically, that you can buy them all for one price, and you can watch them as many times as you want over a 30-day period. So that's really nice. Another nice thing, and there's actually some really important things that I want to share with you in a moment, but the nice thing is that there are some PowerPoints that you can download. There are worksheets and workbooks available for you. Actually, you can download 1 Hour Photographer, my 50-page book, and that's part of the bundle. Another part of the bundle is if you want to talk with me directly, you will have an opportunity to set up a 1-hour group consultation. Now, here's the secret about this. A lot of times only 1 or 2 people show up. So you could have a half hour, an hour just talking about your photography business, one-on-one. And you can ask any questions, and I hold them. It's kind of what I call office hours, a few times a month, and you can pick one and you can sign up and say, hey, I'm gonna be there on this date. And so what I do is I offer people a money-back guarantee. After you go through the videos and you've had that one-on-one or the group session with me, if you feel you haven't gotten the value, and believe me, when my hourly rate for consulting is at minimum $125 an hour for individuals and $250 and higher for corporations, actually a lot higher, believe me, the value's there, but if you still don't think it's there, hey, I'll give you your money back. No questions asked. I think it's highly valuable. I think the series of videos, the in-depth videos, and I'm adding new videos, I think it really is worth your time if you want to continue to grow your photography business and do what you love to do. I mean, that's the key. That's why we watch these videos. That's why you are here, because you know there is high value in understanding pricing, understanding good photography business, because that's the way you're gonna make your living, and that's the way you can continue to do what you love to do. So go to price.photography. That's where you can see this video over and over again as many times as you want, and it's no charge. This is a free video. You may have found it on YouTube or my roshsillars.com blog. I'm pasting it all over the place so everybody has access to it. But it's only here, or pro.roshsillars, where you can buy the special webinars, where I go through those worksheets and kind of give you more one-on-one and in-depth ideas that can really help you really make your photography business profitable and help you grow your business. But for now, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Thank you for watching all the way through this video. You are someone who's obviously dedicated to growing your photography business. You have a great day.